Baruch Hashem. Saya harap sampai di sini kita sudah bisa mengerti betapa 7 hukum Nuh itu benar-benar merupakan kehendak Hashem, memang keinginan Hashem sebagai tuntunan untuk dipatuhi dan dijalankan oleh seluruh umat manusia. Dan pelanggaran terhadap 7 hukum Nuh itu justru membuat hadirat Hashem terangkat jauh sampai dengan level yang ke-7. Dalam penjelasan berikutnya, Rabbi Dr. Shimon D Cowen menjelaskan siapa saja orang-orang yang berhasil menarik kembali hadirat Hashem dari Shamayim level yang ke-7 sampai kepada bumi ini, sampai kembali ada di bumi ini, sampai ada bersama dengan kita sekarang ini. Dan kapan itu terjadi, siapa yang menarik turun hadirat Hashem tersebut, dan dampaknya bagi kita semua. Selamat menyaksikan. Hashem memberkati. Shalom.
Okay, now we're going to speak about the 7 righteous people, the 7 great Tzaddikim who rectified each of those transgressions and brought the Shekinah back down into this world. And of course, the culminating point of that return was at the giving of the Torah, when God revealed his presence in this world and gave the Torah, and gave Jewish mitzvahs, and gave the Noahide mitzvahs again with a new force and a new power which they had not possessed before. So let's look. Now, we mentioned that what was it that brought the divine presence to its furthest, to the 7th heaven, far furthest away from this world, was the immorality of Egypt. Now, the person who arose and corrected that immorality was Abraham. Abraham is the symbol of chesed. Chesed is love, but of a purified love, of a moral love. And it says, for example, in his relationship with his own wife, Sarah, that Sarah was a beautiful woman, but he was not aware of it. So far was he from the idea of lust and immorality that he didn't even appreciate the beauty of his own wife. Only when he came into the atmosphere of Egypt did that have an impact on him, that he said, oh yes, his wife is beautiful. He recognized it. But so Abraham, with his modesty, with his restraint in this area, he rectified the transgression of, we call it in Hebrew, gilui aroyot, or sexual immorality. Now the next generation, and he was his son, Isaac. Isaac was the one who was bound at the Akedah, at the binding of Isaac. Now that, above all, for the Maharal, symbolizes Isaac's acceptance of Hashem's judgment, din. And with this, he corrected the perversion of dinim, the perversion of justice, which had existed in Sodom. So Abraham brought the Shekinah back from the 7th to the 6th, and Isaac brought the divine presence back from the 6th down to the 5th heaven, closer to earth. So then comes Jacob. Jacob is associated with tremendous sanctity, and he was the one who rectified the sin of blasphemy, which is the desecration of Hashem, of Hashem, which was committed with the Tower of Babel, and so he fixed, so to speak, he corrected that transgression of blasphemy. Next was the son of the next generation, the son of Yaakov, of Jacob, Levi. Now Levi, of course, he had a number of sons, but we're focusing here on Levi. His son Levi, of course, is the father of the tribe of Levi, which consists of the Kohanim and the Leviim. Now, the tribe of Levi, when the Jewish people came into Egypt, the land was divided up amongst the tribes. And Levi, whose task was completely given over to the service of Hashem in the Beit HaMikdash, right, and in teaching Torah, they received no portion in the land at all. Their task was simply to serve in the temple and to be teachers. Now, that means the fact that they had no property, they had no part in the land, symbolizes their complete removal from the idea of theft, because theft is about taking the property of somebody else. And they had no property in that sense. They had no inheritance in the land of Israel itself. They would live in cities, for example. There was no section of the land. So Levi symbolizes also the rectification of theft, the idea of theft, which had been characteristic of the generation of the flood. Now, the son amongst the sons of Levi was Kehat. Now, Kehat, we know that the different families, different sons of Levi had different tasks with regard to transporting the sanctuary in the desert. The task of Kehat was to carry the Oran, the holy ark, and the other vessels. There were other families of the children of Levi. There was Gershon and Merari, and their task was to take other parts of the sanctuary, the boards or the curtains and so on. But the task of Kehat was to carry the holiest items and to carry them on their shoulder, not in wagons, but to carry them on their shoulders. And this symbolized also the complete devotion to Hashem. It was the very fact that you're carrying these holy vessels and you're carrying them on your shoulders, not on wagons, but on your own shoulder. So that came to negate the sin of idolatry, which had been present in the time of Enosh. Now, so Kehat, then the next generation down, the sixth generation from Abraham, is the son of Kehat, who is Amram. Amram is the father of Moses. Amram, it says about Amram, was that he was such a holy person. He says there were three people, he said, who should never have died. It was so holy. And Amram was one of them. Why? Because of the snake. The snake in the Garden of Eden had brought death into the world. And it's only because that there was such a phenomenon of death that Amram had to die too. But Amram was himself of such purity and holiness that it was not fitting that he should die. So Amram represents the purity and the sanctity of life. And then with that, he comes to rectify the sin of Cain, who was who killed, the murderer. So the sixth generation, as you see, they're coming straight down again in parallel to the first set. They're coming and they're rectifying. So Amram rectified the sin of murder. Finally, we come to the seventh generation, Moses, the son of Amram. Now Moses was, as we know, a person of such purity and transcendent holiness. Very rare do we find that Hashem would tell a person not to separate from his wife. This is not the Jewish way. And the Torah way is to marry and to have children. But when Hashem united his speech, so to speak, with Moses, it became impossible for Moses. Moses had to separate from his wife because he was a person completely there. He had to be available at all times to communicate with the divine presence. And so he had to separate from his wife. And that symbolizes, that separation is the complete this idea of separating himself from all of his personal and human wishes, totally. That rectified the idea of Eva min achai. As we mentioned from the beginning, Eva min achai is the fact you can't control your desire. That's the idea. One cannot control one's desires. And that's why couldn't even, not even to wait 3 hours, not even to wait a little bit before having the food. So there's that. So what you see with each of these, they're coming back down one level to level. Already with Amram, it was there. The Shekinah had been brought down to the first heaven, and then Moses, the seventh, brings it down from the first heaven down back onto earth again. And that comes with the giving of the Torah and with the building of the Mishkan. And in the Mishkan, Hashem's presence was there in the Mishkan, deep down here on earth. Through Hashem would communicate. So here we see the idea that what do we learn? And then Hashem, of course, gave that when Hashem gave the Torah, as I mentioned before. And Hashem, not only did he reinstate the Noahide laws with new power, because as I mentioned before, now the Noahide laws were not just there to maintain the order of society, but also in a way to sanctify it. And then there were Jewish mitzvahs as well, many of which a Noahide can also do. So here we have then a whole new powerhouse, a resource, armament, structure now to make sure that the world will be completely refined and purified. But you can take another number of lessons from this. You can see, for example, that at the beginning of creation, the keeping of the Noahide laws was enough, was sufficient for the transcendent aspect, the Ikka Shekhinah, to be present in this world. And that's so for me, see, the sanctity which the Noahide laws had at that stage was enough to keep the divine presence in this world.